Charles Parker never thought he would be the type of man to go through someone else's personal belongings. He had always prided himself on being honest and respectful, especially when it came to his wife Diana's privacy. But here he was, standing in their bedroom on a cold Tuesday morning, holding a small leather journal that had fallen from behind Diana's dresser while he was helping her move furniture. Diana had left early that morning for what she said was a doctor's appointment. She had been acting strange lately, distant and secretive. Their conversations had become shorter, and she often seemed lost in thought. Charles had noticed her staying up late, writing in what he assumed was just a regular diary. He never questioned it, because Diana had always been a private person, and he respected that about her. The journal was old and worn, with a small lock that had already been broken. Charles turned it over in his hands, feeling the weight of it. He knew he shouldn't open it, but something inside him was desperate to understand what was happening to his wife. They had been married for 12 years, and lately, it felt like they were strangers living in the same house. He sat down on their bed and slowly opened the first page. Diana's handwriting was neat and careful, just like everything else about her. The first entry was dated 3 months ago, around the time Charles noticed she started acting differently. March 15th. I want to see Dr. Martinez today. The test came back, and everything I feared is true. I don't know how to tell Charles. How do you tell someone you love that your life is about to change in ways neither of you could have imagined? Charles felt his heart skip a beat. What tests? What was Diana talking about? He had never heard her mention Dr. Martinez before. She had always gone to Dr. Wilson for her regular checkups, the same doctor she had been seeing for years. He turned to the next page, his hands already starting to shake slightly. March 20th. I've been researching everything I can about my condition. The internet is both helpful and terrifying. Some stories give me hope. Others make me want to cry for hours. I read about people who live normal, full lives, and others who I can't even write it down. Charles was so happy this morning, making breakfast and humming that song he always hums when he's content. I watched him and wondered if this would be one of the last times I see him like this. Charles had to stop reading. His mind was racing, try to remember that morning 3 weeks ago. He did remember making breakfast, and he remembered feeling particularly happy because Diana had seemed more like herself that day. She had laughed at one of his jokes and helped him with the dishes. He thought things were getting better between them. What condition was she talking about? What was wrong with his wife? He continued reading, each page making his chest feel tighter. March 25th. I scheduled the surgery for next month. Dr. Martinez says the sooner the better. I know I should tell Charles, but I keep finding excuses. Yesterday, he talked about our summer vacation plans, and I just smiled and nodded. How can I tell him that I might not be here for summer? How can I take away his hope when I'm barely holding on to mine? Surgery? Charles felt like the room was spinning. Diana was having surgery and hadn't told him? They shared everything, or at least he thought they did. They had promised each other on their wedding day that they would face everything together, good or bad. He thought about all the small changes he had noticed. Diana had been eating smaller portions lately, saying she wasn't very hungry. She had been taking longer showers and sometimes came out with red eyes, claiming she got soap in them. She had been more affectionate than usual, giving him longer hugs and telling him she loved him more often. Charles had thought she was just going through a phase, maybe stress from her job. The next entry made his hands shake even more. April 2nd. I caught Charles looking at me strangely today while I was doing the dishes. I think he knows something is wrong, but he's too kind to push me. That's what I love about him. He gives me space when he thinks I need it. But this time I need him to push. I need him to ask the hard questions because I'm too scared to volunteer the answers. I'm being a coward, and I know it. But every time I think about the words I need to say, I imagine the look that will come over his face, and I can't do it. Charles remembered that day. He had been watching Diana because she seemed so sad, but when he asked if everything was okay, she just said she was tired. He had offered to finish the dishes, but she insisted she was fine. He wondered now if he should have pushed harder, if he should have demanded to know what was wrong. April 8th. The pre-surgery appointment is tomorrow. I've told Charles I'm going shopping with my sister Jenny. I hate lying to him, but I hate the truth more right now. Dr. Martinez says I should bring someone with me, someone close to me for support. I wanted to ask Charles, but then I would have to explain everything. Jenny knows. I told her last week, and she cried harder than I did. She's been calling every day to check on me. I wish I could be as brave as she thinks I am. Charles felt a wave of anger and hurt wash over him. Diana had told her sister, but not him. He thought about all the phone calls Diana had been having lately, stepping into another room or going outside. He had assumed it was just normal sister talk, but now he realized Diana was sharing the most important parts of her life with everyone except her husband. He kept reading, though each page felt like a knife in his chest. April 12th. Surgery is in 3 days. I packed a small bag and hid it in the back of my closet. I told Charles the first might stay at Jenny's for a few nights to help her with her new baby, which isn't entirely a lie since Jenny did have a baby last month. The timing is perfect in a horrible way. Charles even said he thought it was sweet that I wanted to help my sister. If he only knew I was using her as a cover for my own medical emergency. Charles got up and walked to Diana's closet. Sure enough, pushed far back behind her winter coats was a small overnight bag. He pulled it out and unzipped it. Inside were comfortable clothes, toiletries, and some books. At the bottom was a folder with medical papers. His hand was shaking so badly now that he could barely hold the papers steady enough to read them. The letterhead read, Dr. Martinez, Oncology Department. The word oncology hit Charles like a physical blow. Cancer. Diana had cancer. He sat down hard on the floor of the closet, still holding the medical papers. The diagnosis was for stage 2 breast cancer. The surgery was scheduled for tomorrow. Today was April 14th. Diana wasn't at a doctor's appointment this morning. She was at the hospital preparing for cancer surgery, and she was doing it alone. Charles felt tears starting to form in his eyes as he continued reading the medical notes. The doctor recommended a lumpectomy followed by chemotherapy and radiation. The survival rate was good if caught early, which it seemed to be. But Diana would need months of treatment, and she would need support. He walked back to the bed, still holding the diary, and continued reading. April 14th. This is it. Surgery is in 4 hours. I'm writing this at 5 a.m. because I couldn't sleep. Charles is lying next to me, and he looks so peaceful. I've been watching him sleep for the past hour, memorizing his face. What if something goes wrong? What if I never see him like this again, so relaxed and happy? I reached over to touch his hand, and he smiled in his sleep. I wonder if he's dreaming about something good. I hope so. I hope all his dreams are good ones. Charles looked at the date again. Today was April 14th. Diana was at the hospital right now, going through surgery while he was at home, reading her diary. He felt sick to his stomach thinking about her being scared and alone while he was completely unaware of what was happening. I keep telling myself I'm protecting Charles by not telling him, but I know that's not true. I'm protecting myself. I'm scared that if I say the words out loud, if I tell him I have cancer, then it becomes real in a way it isn't when it's just my secret. I'm scared that he'll look at me differently, that he'll see a sick person instead of his wife. I'm scared that he'll start treating me like I'm fragile, and I'm not ready to be fragile yet. Charles was crying now, tears falling onto the pages of Diana's diary. How could she think he would love her any less because she was sick? How could she not know that he would want to be there for her, to hold her hand during treatments, to research doctors with her, to fight this battle together? I know I'm hurting him by being distant. I can see it in his eyes when I don't explain why I'm upset or why I don't want to make plans for the future. He probably thinks I'm falling out of love with him, which is so far from the truth. I love him more now than ever. Facing the possibility of losing everything makes you realize what's truly important. Charles is the most important thing in my life, and I'm handling this in the worst possible way. The next few entries were shorter, written in a shakier hand. April 15th, surgery went well. Dr. Martinez says they got everything, and the lymph nodes look clear. Jenny has been here with me, and she keeps asking when I'm going to call Charles. I keep saying soon, but I know I'm running out of time. How do you call your husband and say, "Hi, honey, I had cancer surgery yesterday, but don't worry about it"? There's no good way to have this conversation. April 18th, going home today. I told Charles I'm coming back from helping Jenny, and he's so excited. He's been texting me pictures of flowers he bought to welcome me home and a new book he thought I might like. He's been planning a special dinner for tonight. I don't know how I'm going to pretend everything is normal when I can barely lift my arm and I'm taking pain medication every 4 hours. Charles realized that Diana will be coming home soon. She had texted him this morning saying she would be back around lunchtime. He looked at the clock. It was already 11 a.m. She would be here in an hour, and he would have to decide what to do with this information. He read the final entries, which were written in the past few days. April 20th. Charles knows something is wrong. I've been trying to hide the pain and tiredness, but it's getting harder. Yesterday, he offered to give me a back rub, and I panicked and made up an excuse about being too hot. I saw the hurt in his eyes, and I felt terrible. He started to think I don't want him to touch me. The truth is I want nothing more than to curl up in his arms and tell him everything, but I'm scared of the surgical site and scared he'll feel the bandages through my shirt. April 22nd. I start chemotherapy next week. Dr. Martinez says I'll probably lose my hair and feel very tired. I don't know how I'm going to hide chemotherapy from Charles. Jenny offered to tell him for me, but this is something I need to do myself. I've been practicing what I'll say, but every version sounds terrible. Charles, I have cancer. Charles, I've been lying to you for weeks. Charles, I need you to forgive me for not trusting you with the most important thing that's ever happened to me. April 23rd. Last entry before I tell him. I'm going to do it tonight after dinner. I can't live with this secret anymore, and I can't keep hurting him by pushing him away. I don't know how he's going to react. I don't know if he'll be angry that I didn't tell him, or hurt that I didn't trust him, or scared about what this means for our future. Maybe all three. But I know that I love him, and I know that he loves me, and I have to believe that love is stronger than my fear. Charles closed the diary and sat in silence for several minutes. His wife had cancer, had already had surgery, and was about to start chemotherapy. She had been carrying this enormous burden alone for months, and she was planning to tell him tonight. He thought about how scared she must have been going through surgery without him. He thought about how she must have felt lying to him day after day, and how hard it must have been to act normal when her whole world had been turned upside down. He understood now why she had been distant and sad. She hadn't been falling out of love with him. She had been trying to protect him from her pain. Charles heard a car door slam outside. Diana was home. He quickly put the diary back where he had found it and wiped his eyes. He had to decide quickly what to do. Should he tell her that he knew? Should he wait for her to tell him tonight as she had planned? Should he pretend he didn't know anything? As he heard Diana's key in the front door, Charles realized that this moment would change everything between them. One way or another, their secret would end today, and they would finally face this together. He just hoped that when the truth came out, their love would be strong enough to overcome the fear and lies that had kept them apart. Charles heard Diana's footsteps coming up the stairs, each step making his heart pound harder. He quickly moved away from the closet and sat on the edge of their bed, trying to look casual while his mind raced with everything he had just learned. The sound of her voice calling his name from downstairs made his chest tighten. Charles, I'm home. The flowers are beautiful. Thank you so much. Her voice sounded tired but forced cheerful, and now Charles understood why. He could hear the effort it took for her to sound normal when she was probably in pain and exhausted from hiding such a huge secret. He wanted to run downstairs and hold her, tell her he knew everything and that it was going to be okay, but he also didn't want to take away her chance to tell him herself. I'll be right down, he called back, his voice catching slightly. He took a deep breath and tried to compose himself. The image of Diana going through surgery alone kept flashing through his mind, making him feel sick with guilt and sadness. When Charles came downstairs, Diana was standing in the kitchen, putting her overnight bag down by the counter. She looked thinner than when she had left, and there was something fragile about the way she was moving. Now that he knew what to look for, he could see the signs he had missed before. She was holding her left arm slightly away from her body, and when she reached up to put something in the cabinet, she winced almost imperceptibly. "How's Jenny?" Charles asked, walking over to give her a hug. Diana tensed slightly when he put his arms around her, and he realized she was afraid he might hurt her surgical sight. He made the hug gentle and brief, though everything in him wanted to hold her tight and never let go. "She's doing well. The baby is getting bigger and keeping her busy," Diana said, and Charles could hear the strain in her voice as she tried to maintain the lie. "Thank you for letting me go help her. I know it was kind of sudden." Charles felt his heart break a little more. Even now, she was thanking him for something that had been a cover story for her cancer surgery. "Of course, that's what family does for each other," he said, and he meant it in ways she didn't even know yet. They spent the afternoon together, and Charles found himself watching Diana's every movement, looking for signs of pain or discomfort. When she sat down on the couch, she moved slowly and carefully. When she reached for her coffee cup, she used her right hand instead of her left. When she laughed at something on TV, it seemed forced and didn't reach her eyes. Around dinner time, Charles offered to cook, but Diana insisted she wanted to make his favorite meal. "I missed cooking for you," she said, and Charles knew this was probably part of her plan to soften the blow before telling him about the cancer. As Diana moved around the kitchen, Charles noticed how she kept pausing to rest, leaning against the counter when she thought he wasn't looking. At one point, she dropped a wooden spoon and bent down to pick it up, gasping softly in pain when the movement stretched her surgical site. "Are you okay?" Charles asked, moving toward her. "I'm fine, just clumsy," Diana said quickly, but Charles could see tears threatening at the corners of her eyes. Dinner was quiet, with both of them lost in their own thoughts. Diana barely ate, pushing food around her plate while Charles tried to act normal. He complimented the meal and talked about his day at work, but he could see that Diana wasn't really listening. She kept looking at him with a strange expression, like she was memorizing his face. After dinner, Diana suggested they sit on the back porch with some tea. It was a beautiful evening, and under normal circumstances, Charles would have enjoyed the peaceful moment. But knowing what he knew, every minute felt heavy with anticipation. Diana was unusually quiet as they sat side by side on the porch swing. Charles could see her hands shaking slightly as she held her teacup. After about 10 minutes of silence, she turned to him with tears in her eyes. "Charles, I need to tell you something very important," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. Charles felt his heart start racing. This was it, the moment Diana had been planning for weeks. He tried to keep his expression neutral, though inside he was screaming with the need to tell her that he already knew that she didn't have to carry this burden alone anymore. "I've been lying to you," Diana continued, tears now flowing freely down her cheeks. "For months, I've been lying about where I've been going and what I've been doing, and I can't do it anymore." Charles reached over and took her hand, squeezing gently. "Whatever it is, we'll figure out together," he said, and he meant every word. Diana looked down at their joined hands and took a shaky breath. 3 months ago, I found a lump in my breast during a self-exam. I was scared, so I made an appointment with an oncologist without telling you. I didn't want to worry you until I knew for sure what we were dealing with." Charles felt tears starting in his own eyes, but he stayed quiet, letting Diana tell her story in her own way. "The tests confirmed what I was afraid of. I have breast cancer, Charles. Stage 2. Diana's voice broke on the words, and she looked up at him with fear and desperation in her eyes. "I had surgery 3 days ago to remove the tumor. That's where I've really been, at the hospital, not helping Jenny." Charles felt like his chest was caving in, even though he already knew. Hearing Diana say the words out loud made it real in a way that reading her diary hadn't. This was really happening to them, to her, to the woman he loved more than life itself. "The doctor says the surgery went well," Diana continued, speaking faster now, like she needed to get all the words out before she lost her courage. They think they got everything, but I'll need chemotherapy and radiation therapy to make sure. I start treatments next week. Charles pulled Diana into his arms, being careful of her surgical site, and held her while she cried. All the fear and stress she had been holding inside for months came pouring out, and Charles felt every sob like a physical pain in his own chest. "I'm so sorry I didn't tell you," Diana whispered against his shoulder. "I was scared you would look at me differently, like I was broken or fragile. I was scared you would stop seeing me as your wife and start seeing me as a patient. I was scared of so many things, and I handled it all wrong." "No, no," Charles whispered back, stroking her hair gently. "You were scared, and that's understandable. But, Diana, you're not alone in this. You never have to be alone in this." They sat there for a long time, Diana crying and Charles holding her, both of them finally sharing the weight of the secret that had been tearing them apart. As the sun set behind them, Charles felt a strange mixture of relief and terror. Relief that the lies were finally over, and terror about what the future might hold. "What happens next?" Charles asked when Diana's tears had slowed. "Chemotherapy starts Monday," Diana said, wiping her eyes with a tissue Charles had pulled from his pocket. "Dr. Martinez says it will be 6 months of treatment, once every 3 weeks. I'll probably lose my hair, and I'll be very tired. The radiation comes after that, 5 days a week for 6 weeks." Charles was quiet for a moment, processing the reality of what they were facing. 6 months of chemotherapy, followed by radiation. Diana would be sick and tired, and she would lose her beautiful hair. But she would be fighting, and she wouldn't be fighting alone. "I want to come with you," Charles said firmly. "To all your appointments, all your treatments. I want to meet Dr. Martinez and understand exactly what we're dealing with. I want to be involved in every decision." Diana looked at him with surprise and something that might have been hope. "You don't have to do that. I know how busy you are at work, and—" "Diana, stop," Charles interrupted gently but firmly. "You're my wife. You're the most important thing in my life. There's nothing more important than being there for you during this. Nothing." They talked until well past midnight, with Diana explaining everything she had learned about her diagnosis and treatment plan. Charles asked questions and took notes, already thinking about how to rearrange his work schedule and what they would need to do to prepare for the difficult months ahead. The next morning, Charles woke up early and made Diana breakfast in bed. She was moving even more slowly than the day before, clearly still recovering from surgery. As he watched her try to cut her pancakes with one hand while holding her left arm still, Charles made a decision. "Diana, I need to tell you something," he said, sitting down on the edge of the bed. Diana looked up at him with alarm. "What's wrong?" "Yesterday morning, when you were at your doctor's appointment, I was helping you move that dresser like you asked. Your diary fell out from behind it, and the lock was already broken." Charles watched Diana's face carefully as he spoke. "I know I shouldn't have, but I was so worried about you, and I opened it and read some of it." Diana's face went pale, and Charles could see a mixture of anger, embarrassment, and fear in her eyes. "How much did you read?" "Enough to know about the cancer before you told me last night," Charles admitted. "I know about the surgery, about Dr. Martinez, about how scared you've been. Diana, I am so sorry you went through that surgery alone. If I had known, you would have insisted on being there," Diana finished for him, and, to Charles's surprise, she didn't sound angry. She sounded sad and maybe a little relieved. "Of course I would have. You're my wife. I love you more than anything in this world." Charles reached over and took her hand. "I spent all day yesterday knowing what you were planning to tell me, and it nearly killed me to pretend I didn't know. But I wanted to give you the chance to tell me yourself the way you had planned." Diana was quiet for a long moment, processing what Charles had told her. Finally, she squeezed his hand and looked up at him. "Are you angry that I didn't tell you sooner?" she asked, her voice small and uncertain. "I'm not angry," Charles said truthfully. "I'm hurt that you felt like you had to carry this alone, and I'm sad that you were so scared. But I understand why you did it. You were trying to protect me, even though you were the one who needed protecting." Diana started crying again, but these tears seemed different, less desperate, and more relieved. "I've been so scared, Charles. Not just about the cancer, but about losing you. I was afraid that if I told you, everything would change between us." "Everything has changed," Charles said gently, "but not the way you think. I don't love you any less because you're sick. If anything, I love you more because I've seen how strong and brave you are. You've been fighting this battle for months, trying to protect everyone else while you were scared and hurting." They spent the rest of the morning talking about practical things, how to prepare for chemotherapy, what side effects to expect, how to tell their families and friends. Charles called his boss and explained the situation, arranging to work from home whenever possible and take time off for Diana's appointments. That afternoon, they went together to meet Dr. Martinez. Charles was nervous about the appointment, not sure what to expect from the doctor who had been treating his wife while he remained completely unaware. But Dr. Martinez turned out to be a kind, patient woman who took time to answer all of Charles's questions and explain Diana's treatment plan in detail. "How long have you known about Diana's diagnosis?" Dr. Martinez asked Charles during the appointment. "She told me last night," Charles answered honestly. "I wish I had known sooner so I could have been there for the surgery." Dr. Martinez looked at Diana with a gentle smile. "It's very common for patients to wait before telling their loved ones. Everyone processes these kinds of diagnoses differently. The important thing is that you're both here now, ready to face this together." As they drove home from the appointment, Diana reached over and took Charles's hand. "Thank you for not being angry about the diary," she said quietly. "Thank you for finally trusting me with the truth," Charles replied. "No more secrets, okay? Whatever happens from here on out, we face it together." Diana nodded, and for the first time in months, Charles saw something like peace in her expression. The road ahead would be difficult, but they would travel it as a team. The fear and isolation that had been eating away at both of them was finally gone, replaced by love and determination to fight this battle together. That night, as they lay in bed, Diana curled up carefully against Charles's side, being mindful of her surgical site. "I'm scared about losing my hair," she whispered in the dark. Charles kissed the top of her head and tightened his arms around her gently. "Then, we'll be scared together," he whispered back. "And when you're ready, we'll pick out some beautiful scarves and hats. Or maybe you'll look amazing bald. Either way, you'll still be the most beautiful woman I've ever seen." Diana smiled against his chest, and Charles felt some of the tension leave her body. For the first time in months, they both slept peacefully, no longer separated by secrets and fear. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, but they would face them as partners, the way they had always promised they would. The first chemotherapy appointment arrived faster than either Charles or Diana felt ready for. Charles had taken the entire day off work and spent the morning researching what to expect, reading every article and forum post he could find about supporting someone through cancer treatment. Diana had barely slept the night before, tossing and turning despite Charles's gentle attempts to comfort her. "What if I get really sick?" Diana asked for the third time that morning as they drove to the cancer center. "What if I can't handle it?" Charles reached over and squeezed her hand. Over the past week, since Diana had told him the truth, they had grown closer than ever before. Without the wall of secrets between them, they had been able to support each other through the fear and uncertainty. But today felt different. Today was the beginning of the real fight. "Then, we'll figure out together," Charles said, using the phrase that had become their motto over the past week. Dr. Martinez said the first treatment is usually the hardest because you don't know what to expect. After today, we'll know what we're dealing with. The cancer center was busier than Charles had expected. The waiting room was filled with people of all ages, some wearing scarves or hats, others with family members beside them reading magazines or working on puzzles. Charles noticed how Diana looked around nervously, taking in the reality of becoming part of this community of cancer patients. When they called Diana's name, Charles started to get up with her, but she hesitated. "Maybe you should wait here," she said quietly. "What if seeing me get the treatment is too hard for you?" Charles looked at her in surprise. Even now, after everything they had talked about, Diana was still trying to protect him. "Diana, I want to be with you. The only thing that would be hard for me is sitting out here wondering how you're doing and not being able to help." The treatment room was smaller than Charles had expected, with several comfortable reclining chairs arranged around the room. Each chair had a four-pole next to it, and there were warm blankets folded neatly on each armrest. The nurses were incredibly kind, explaining every step of the process and making sure both Charles and Diana understood what was happening. First-time patients often feel anxious. The nurse, Sarah, explained as she helped Diana get settled in her chair. "That's completely normal. The treatment will take about 4 hours, so we want you to be as comfortable as possible." Charles pulled a chair next to Diana's and held her hand as the nurse prepared the four. Diana squeezed his fingers tightly when the needle went in, and Charles felt every bit of her discomfort as if it were his own. "Tell me about your work," Diana said suddenly, clearly trying to distract herself as the chemotherapy drugs began flowing into her system. "What's happening with the Johnson project?" Charles understood that she needed distraction, so he spent the first hour telling her about everything happening at his office, making up details when necessary to keep her mind occupied. Other patients around them were reading, sleeping, or talking quietly with their companions. Charles noticed an elderly man in the chair across from them who was alone, and he made a mental note to ask Diana if she thought they should invite him to join their conversation. About 2 hours into the treatment, Diana started feeling nauseous. Sarah brought her some anti-nausea medication and crackers, but Charles could see that Diana was struggling. Her face was pale, and she kept taking deep breaths like she was trying not to be sick. "I don't think I can do this," Diana whispered to Charles when the nurse stepped away. "I feel awful, and this is just the first treatment. How am I going to do this every 3 weeks for 6 months?" Charles felt helpless watching his wife suffer, knowing there was nothing he could do to take away her discomfort. But he remembered something Dr. Martinez had said during their appointment. The hardest part isn't the physical symptoms, it's the feeling that you're losing control of your own body. "You don't have to think about the next 6 months," Charles said gently. "You just have to get through today, and you're already halfway done with today." Diana nodded weakly, but Charles could see that she was scared. He started telling her about a vacation they had taken 3 years earlier, describing in detail the little bed and breakfast they had stayed at and the funny old man who ran it. Slowly, Diana's breathing became more regular, and some of the tension left her face. When the treatment was finally finished, Diana was exhausted but relieved. "That wasn't as bad as I thought it would be," she said as they walked slowly to the car. "I mean, it was bad, but it wasn't impossible." The drive home was quiet, with Diana dozing in the passenger seat. Charles found himself thinking about how many more of these days they would have, how many times he would watch his wife battle through discomfort and fear. But he also thought about how proud he was of her strength and how grateful he was that he could be there with her. The next few days were difficult. Diana was more tired than she had ever been in her life, sleeping 12 to 14 hours a day and struggling to eat. Charles took over all the household responsibilities, cooking simple meals that might appeal to Diana's sensitive stomach, and doing laundry and cleaning without being asked. On the 3rd day after treatment, Diana woke up feeling slightly better, and they decided to take a short walk around their neighborhood. It was a beautiful spring day, and Diana seemed to enjoy being outside after being stuck in bed for so long. "I keep thinking about something," Diana said as they walked slowly down their street. "When you read my diary, what did you think about me lying to you for so long?" Charles had been expecting this question, but he still wasn't sure how to answer it. "Honestly, I was hurt at first. Not angry, but hurt that you felt like you couldn't trust me with something so important." Diana looked down at the sidewalk. "I did trust you. That's not why I didn't tell you." "I know that now," Charles said. "I understand that you were trying to protect me and that you were scared. But, Diana, I need you to promise me something. What? Promise me that from now on, you'll let me be scared with you instead of trying to handle everything alone. I know you think you're protecting me by keeping bad news to yourself, but being shut out hurts worse than knowing the truth. Diana stopped walking and turned to face him. I promise. No more secrets, no matter how scary the truth is. They sealed the promise with a gentle kiss, standing there on the sidewalk like teenagers. Charles felt like they had just renewed their wedding vows in some way, making a new commitment to face everything together, good and bad. A week later, Diana noticed her hair starting to come out in the shower. She had been expecting it, but it was still shocking to see clumps of hair in her hands. She came out of the bathroom with tears in her eyes, holding a handful of dark strands. It's starting, she said simply, and Charles felt his heart break for her. They had already bought several beautiful scarves and a couple of wigs, but seeing Diana's distress made Charles realize that no amount of preparation could make this loss easy. Diana's hair had always been one of her favorite features, long, thick, and naturally wavy. She spent time every morning styling it, and Charles loved running his fingers through it. Do you want me to help you cut it short before it all falls out? Charles offered. Maybe it would be easier to control that way. Diana considered this for a moment, then nodded. I think I like that. I don't want to wake up tomorrow with hair all over my pillow. They set up in the bathroom with a pair of sharp scissors and a handheld mirror. Charles had never cut anyone's hair before, but Diana talked him through it, telling him how short to make it and where to cut. As each piece of hair fell to the floor, Charles felt like they were saying goodbye to a part of Diana that would never come back. When they were finished, Diana looked at herself in the mirror for a long time. Her hair was now very short, almost pixie-like, and it completely changed her appearance. She looked younger somehow, but also more fragile. What do you think? She asked Charles. Uncertainty cleared her voice. I think you're beautiful, Charles said honestly. Different but beautiful. And when it all grows back, it might even be clear or a different color. Some people say that happens after chemotherapy. Diana smiled for the first time that day. Maybe I'll get the curly hair I always wanted. Over the next 2 weeks, the rest of Diana's hair gradually fell out. They found hair on her pillowcase, in the shower, and on her clothes. Each day brought more loss, until finally, Diana was completely bald. The first time Charles saw her without any hair at all, he had to work hard not to react visibly. She looked so vulnerable, so different from the woman he had married. But as the days passed, Charles found that he actually liked Diana's bald head. The shape of her skull was beautiful, and without hair to hide behind, her eyes seemed bigger and more expressive. She started wearing colorful scarves during the day and soft caps to bed, and Charles thought she looked elegant and strong. I feel like a different person, Diana told him one evening as they sat together watching TV. She was wearing a turquoise scarf that brought out the blue in her eyes. Not in a bad way, exactly. Just different. How so? Charles asked, genuinely curious. I don't know how to explain it. It's like I'm discovering parts of myself I never knew existed. I'm stronger than I thought I was, but also more vulnerable. I'm scared of things I never worried about before, but I'm also braver about things that used to terrify me. Charles understood what she meant. The cancer had changed both of them in ways they were still discovering. They had learned that they could handle much more than they had ever imagined, but they had also learned how precious and fragile life really was. The second chemotherapy treatment was easier than the first, partly because they knew what to expect. Diana still felt sick and tired afterward, but she bounced back more quickly. By the third treatment, they had developed a routine that worked for them. Charles would bring books to read aloud, crossword puzzles to work on together, and Diana's favorite snacks. During the fourth treatment, they met an older woman named Rose who was also receiving chemotherapy. Rose had been fighting ovarian cancer for 2 years, and she had a spirit and sense of humor that immediately drew Diana to her. The two women began timing their treatments so they could sit near each other, and Charles enjoyed listening to their conversations about everything from their grandchildren to their favorite recipes. You know, Rose told Diana during their 5th treatment together, I've learned that cancer gives you permission to ask for what you need. Before I got sick, I spent so much time worrying about inconveniencing other people. Now I ask for help when I need it, and I tell people exactly how I feel. Diana thought about this for the rest of the treatment. That evening, she surprised Charles by being more direct than usual about her needs. I need you to hold me tonight, but I also need you to understand that I might not want to talk, she said as they got ready for bed. Sometimes I feel like I have to entertain you or make conversation because you're doing so much to take care of me. But tonight, I just want to be held without having to say anything. Charles was amazed by Diana's honesty. I love that you told me exactly what you need. I never want you to feel like you have to entertain me or anyone else. As they lay in bed that night, Charles holding Diana gently against his chest, he reflected on how much their relationship had deepened since the diagnosis. They had always loved each other, but now they truly understood each other in a way they never had before. They had learned to communicate without fear, to ask for what they needed, and to be honest about their feelings even when those feelings were difficult. The cancer was terrible, but it had also given them something precious. The knowledge that their love was strong enough to survive anything, and the courage to be completely honest with each other about everything that mattered. 6 months later, Charles sat in the same waiting room where this journey had begun, but everything felt different now. Diana was getting her final chemotherapy treatment, and they both felt a mixture of excitement and anxiety about this milestone. The woman sitting beside him bore little resemblance to the scared, secretive person who had hidden her diagnosis for months. Diana had grown into her baldness with a confidence that amazed Charles. She wore beautiful scarves with pride, and her collection had grown to include gifts from friends, family members, and even some of the other patients they had met during treatment. But more than her appearance, it was Diana's entire approach to life that had transformed. I can't believe this is the last one, Diana said, squeezing Charles's hand as they waited for her name to be called. I'm excited, but I'm also kind of scared. What if I don't know how to be a regular person again? Charles understood her concern. Over the past 6 months, their lives had revolved around treatment schedules, blood tests, and managing side effects. In some ways, the routine had become comforting, providing structure during an uncertain time. We'll figure out the same way we figure out everything else, Charles said. Together, one day at a time. When they called Diana's name for the final time, Charles felt emotional in a way he hadn't expected. Sarah, the nurse who had been with him through most of the treatments, gave Diana a long hug. You've been such an inspiration to watch, Sarah told Diana. I've seen a lot of patients come through here, and you've handled this journey with more grace than most. You should be very proud of yourself. The final treatment went smoothly, and Diana felt surprisingly energetic afterward. I think my body knows this is the last time, she laughed as they walked to the car. It's like it's celebrating already. That evening, Diana wanted to do something special to mark the occasion. They went to their favorite restaurant, the one where Charles had proposed 7 years earlier. Diana wore a beautiful purple scarf that brought out the color of her eyes, and Charles couldn't help but stare at her across the table. What are you looking at? Diana asked, smiling. I'm looking at the strongest person I've ever known, Charles said. 6 months ago, you were so scared you couldn't even tell me what was happening. Look at you now. Diana reached across the table and took his hand. 6 months ago, we were both different people. This experience changed both of us. She was right. Charles had learned things about himself that he never would have discovered otherwise. He had learned that he was capable of being a caregiver, that he could handle medical emergencies and difficult conversations with doctors. He had learned that his love for Diana was deeper than he had ever imagined, and that he was much stronger than he had thought. But perhaps most importantly, he had learned to appreciate ordinary moments in a way he never had before. Every morning that Diana woke up feeling good, every meal she was able to eat without nausea, every evening they spent together on their porch, all of these had become precious to him in ways they never were before the diagnosis. 2 weeks after Diana's final chemotherapy treatment, they went for a follow-up appointment with Dr. Martinez. The doctor ordered blood tests and scheduled Diana for scans to make sure the cancer was gone. The waiting period for results was agonizing, but it was different from the fear they had felt at the beginning of treatment. Now they felt like they could handle whatever news they received. When Dr. Martinez called them back in her office with the results, both Charles and Diana were nervous but hopeful. The doctor's face broke into a wide smile before she even started talking. "The scans are completely clear," Dr. Martinez said. "There is no evidence of cancer anywhere in your body." The treatment was completely successful. Charles felt like all the air had been knocked out of his lungs. After 6 months of fighting and worrying and hoping, they had actually won. Diana started crying immediately, and Charles pulled her in his arms, both of them sobbing with relief and joy. "What happens now?" Diana asked when she could speak again. "Now we start monitoring," Dr. Martinez explained. "You'll come in every 3 months for the first year, then every 6 months after that. We'll do scans and blood work to make sure the cancer doesn't come back. But for now, you're cancer-free, and that's something to celebrate." The drive home was euphoric. Diana called her sister Jenny to share the news, and Charles called his parents. Everyone they talked to was crying and laughing and celebrating with them. That night, they invited their closest friends over for an impromptu party, and Charles watched Diana laugh and talk with an energy he hadn't seen in months. But it was later that night, after everyone had gone home, that Charles and Diana had their most important conversation. "I keep thinking about something," Diana said as they cleaned up the dishes from the party. "During all of this, I never asked you if you were angry about the diary. I told you I was sorry, and you said you understood, but I never asked if you were hurt or angry." Charles paused in his dish, trying to think about her question. It felt like a lifetime ago that he had found Diana's journal and learned about her secret diagnosis. So much had happened since then, and they had both grown so much. "I was hurt," he admitted, "but not for the reasons you might think. I wasn't hurt that you didn't trust me. I understood why you were scared. I was hurt that you were carrying such a heavy burden alone, and that you felt like you had to protect me from it." Diana nodded thoughtfully. "I've been thinking about that too. I realize now that I was trying to control something that couldn't be controlled. I thought if I didn't tell you, somehow it wouldn't be as real. But all I did was make both of us suffer more than we needed to." "You know what's strange?" Charles said. "In some ways, I'm grateful that I found your diary when I did. If I hadn't, I might have waited for you to tell me, and you might have waited even longer because you were so scared. At least this way, we only lost a few days instead of weeks or months." Diana smiled at this. "You're right. And in a weird way, I think it was meant to happen like that. Maybe the diary fell out exactly when it was supposed to, so that we would finally be forced to be honest with each other." They finished cleaning in comfortable silence, both lost in their own thoughts about the journey they had just completed. When they went to bed that night, Diana curled up against Charles's side in the same position they had slept in throughout her treatment. "I have something to tell you," Diana said quietly in the dark. Charles felt his heart skip a beat. After everything they'd been through, unexpected announcements still made him nervous. "What is it?" "I started a new diary," Diana said. "But this one is different. This one is for both of us. I write about our experiences with cancer, but I also leave space for you to write your thoughts about everything we've been through." Charles was intrigued. "Can I see it?" Diana reached over to her bedside table and pulled out a small notebook. It was different from the leather journal Charles had found months earlier. This one was bright and colorful, with a ribbon bookmark marking their place. "Read the first entry," Diana said, handing him the notebook. Charles opened to the first page and read Diana's neat handwriting by the light of his bedside lamp. "Today, Charles, and I begin a new chapter. The cancer is gone, and we survived something I never thought we could survive. But more than that, we learned that our love is stronger than fear, stronger than secrets, and stronger than illness. I want to remember everything we learned during this time, because I never want to forget how precious every ordinary day really is. This journal is for both of us, so we can remember this journey and how it made us stronger." Below Diana's entry, Charles saw a space marked Charles's thoughts, with his name written in Diana's handwriting. "What should I write?" Charles asked. "Whatever you're thinking right now," Diana said. "Whatever you want to remember about today, or about these past 6 months, or about anything at all." Charles thought for a moment, then picked up the pen Diana handed him. He wrote, "Today my wife is cancer-free. 6 months ago, I found her old diary and learned that she was fighting the biggest battle of her life without me. I was hurt and scared, but I was also amazed by her strength. Watching Diana go through chemotherapy taught me what courage really looks like. It's not the absence of fear. It's continuing to fight and hope and love even when you're terrified. Diana is the bravest person I know, and I'm grateful every day that she chose to share her life with me. No matter what else happens, I will never forget that love is stronger than fear, and that we can handle anything as long as we face it together." Diana read Charles's entry with tears in her eyes. "That's beautiful," she whispered. "I want us to keep writing in this journal for the rest of our lives, so we never forget what we learned." As they settled down to sleep that night, Charles reflected on the incredible journey they had just completed. 6 months earlier, he had thought his marriage was falling apart because his wife was distant and secretive. He had no idea that she was actually fighting for her life while trying to protect him from her fear. Now, lying next to his cancer-free wife, Charles understood that the experience had made their relationship stronger than ever before. They had learned to communicate without fear, to ask for what they needed, and to face difficult truths together instead of trying to handle them alone. The cancer was gone, but the lessons they had learned would stay with them forever. They knew now that their love could survive anything, and that honesty, even painful honesty, was always better than well-meaning secrets. Diana's hair had started growing back, coming in curly and gray in a way that made her look distinguished and beautiful. But more than her physical recovery, it was her emotional transformation that amazed Charles every day. The woman who had been too scared to tell him about her diagnosis had become someone who faced every challenge head-on, who asked for what she needed, and who refused to waste time worrying about things she couldn't control. As Charles drifted off to sleep, he thought about their shared journal and all the entries they would write in the years to come. They would write about Diana's continued recovery, about ordinary days that felt like miracles, and about all the ways their love continued to grow stronger. The diary that had once held Diana's secrets and fears would be replaced by a journal full of hope, honesty, and gratitude. And Charles knew that no matter what challenges they might face in the future, they would face them together, with no secrets between them, and no fear too big for their love to overcome.